I think you missed part of my my presentation getting started. I'd like to welcome you, and I'm glad you're here. And we're going to talk for about 40 minutes, and we're recording this webinar, so we'll take questions at the end, and we'll put slide recap and a blog post as well as the recording up afterwards. So hello, I'm Mark Winberry. I'm really glad you're here today. I'm the U.S. Operations Director for Pronovix.
Hi, I'm Ádám Balogh, and I'm working as a technical writer for Pronovix.
So my story with Pronovix started a number of years ago when I was at a different company, and my team had a really difficult project to do with some really strict deadlines. I needed help, and I hired the Pronovix team, and together we succeeded. Great friendships are often forged in fire, and that's certainly what happened in this case. I really liked the team. I liked how the company worked and conducted business, and we stayed in contact. Last year, the stars aligned, and I was able to join the company in June to establish a U.S. presence to better serve our customers in North America. Outside of work, I like animals, particularly cats, and I'm an avid maker and try to make interesting things of all kinds of sorts.
Previously, I was working at the University of Szeged in Hungary in the field of digital philology. With my team, we created a digital XML database for close reading analysis of Hungarian poems from the 17th century. We made the results searchable and upgradable for other scholars by publishing the poems and the results to the web in an interactive and collaborative form. Now, as a technical writer, I dedicated myself to developing tools and methods to make documentation writing and checking more efficient. I like 2D video games and fiction, and I'm also a drummer in a metal band.
So that's a little bit about us. In case you're unfamiliar with Pronovix and the work that we do, we are a fast-growing consultancy with offices in Belgium, Hungary, and now in North America to serve our global customers. 4 years ago, we switched from being a Drupal development agency to strictly building developer portals. We've got clients from a wide range of business domains that we serve, and after working with dozens of customers on DevPortal implementations, we've gone ahead and created a DevPortal product that embodies this collective experience that we've had. We take care of the whole package, starting with UX and strategy consultations to helping you develop content architecture, the actual technical implementation, customizations that you may need, and hosting and support. Here's a shot that I'm in the very back, bald guy with the glasses on, in the very back from last summer in front of our office in Szeged, Hungary. We're a bit unusual from a lot of companies in that we have a flat company structure. And if you look closely, you'll see our t-shirts have our company motto, which is grow and help grow. This means that we're a learning organization, and we take that very seriously. We work to make each other better, and we've learned quite a lot from our customers, the research we conduct, and a whole lot from various open source projects and communities that we participate in. We've had great success with this kind of collaborative sharing approach. So about 3 years ago, we started a conference series that was more narrowly focused on not just documentation, but on API documentation and dev portals and how developer relations all kind of happen in your dev portal. Our most recent API at the Docs conference was held in October in Amsterdam, which finished with our dev portal awards. These are a set of awards that we host with nominations and voting by the API Docs community. And These awards recognize DevPortals that showcase great developer experiences across a variety of categories. This year, we're going bigger and also trying to spread out where we're doing these conferences. So we got 4 that we're conducting this year. The first is going to be May the 1st in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to be there, and I would love to see you there or at one of the other conferences that we participate in. I hope you get a sense that we're very passionate about what we're doing. We want to make our corner of the world a better place. Just as we strive to improve ourselves, we also want to improve our customers' lives and the lives of developers who are out there using your products, so that you and your colleagues don't feel like this, your customers don't feel like this, but rather we all can feel like this. So today we're here to talk about Docs as code and the workflows around that. It's a huge topic, and there are many great books and blogs that you can find about it to learn more. And I just want to point out that as Ádám and I were working on an outline for this presentation, we kept wanting to go off in various directions because there are so many interesting kind of sidebars that are related, and decided that just like when you're hiking and you see interesting paths that you want to take, you can't really get to your destination if you go off on side paths. So you're going to see some paths and topics today that you wish we would go more deeply in, but we don't have time to go. So hopefully we'll be able to come back to them on a later date and explore, hopefully with some of you. After the webinar, we're going to send out a feedback questionnaire to see how we did. And we'd love it if you tell us which of these topics you would like for us to visit in future blogs or webinars or conference talks. So first off, since we can't cover everything and we're just going to keep it basic, I'm going to try to present it in a simple and generic way so that the overall picture is clear. And then Ádám is going to make it real with some demos. But we want to make sure that you leave today understanding what a Docs as code workflow is all about, what some of the tools are, and how they can improve your documentation. But first, the critical question is, why should you care? Well, we're assuming that because you're here, you have a developer portal or are thinking about one. If you have one, you may think that it's just a collection of your digital assets and documentation that offers some interfaces to your customers, partners, or vendors. And if that's where you're at, we hope to expand your view. If you want to improve the success of your API program or the product strategy that your API program is supporting, you should really be thinking about your DevPortal as more than just reference docs. Some people think they're done whenever they publish the reference docs, but just as good reference docs are important by themselves, they're not enough. As an example, just consider trying to learn a foreign language by looking at a dictionary. It's helpful, but you're not going to learn the language that way. Same is true with your reference docs. So we hope you'll consider many of the other types of documentations and elements that can help make your developer portal into a real self-service hub. And because it serves as an interface between you and your customers, some of whom you may never talk to, or they may never talk to your sales or marketing or support team, it can become the playing field where you will win or lose. Making great user journeys through your developer portal will establish trust with your customers and help turn them into fans of your company. Also, just something we see sometimes is that the assumption is that everyone who comes to your developer portal are technical users. But we find that many program managers, business solutions architects, and other business people at your customers or partners, they're coming to your developer portal too. They want to evaluate your offerings and learn about what you're doing. And so keep them in mind as well. We hope to demonstrate today how adopting some automation and quality checking will help you enable the best experiences for your customers while making your program more efficient, effective, and deliver more value, all while saving you money. So even though today's talk focuses on the technical side of content authoring, when you think about your internal organization, realize that you've got various stakeholders within your organization that have different needs. So here are some common personas that we use at Pronovix to think about different people who use our product. You've got Ben, Sasha, and Elizabeth who are producing technical content, and as such, they're more likely to use or be willing to use more technical workflows. But again, don't neglect the needs of your business users. They're very key to your program's success. Take Sophia, your API product owner, or Stefan from product marketing. They need to provide conceptual content, do very important things like explain your value proposition and the business and legal terms for using your services. They're going to be happier with an editorial interface with WYSIWYG editors and the ability to create pages by placing and populating blocks that don't require them to edit HTML or CSS, even if they can. However, the majority of your content and the content that tends to need the most maintenance will come from your technical team. And if your experience is like mine, then you're accustomed to hearing that the business wants bigger, better, faster, more, and the inevitable work harder, work smarter, not harder, which I've learned is a coded message for you're not going to get any more budget. You just have to find ways to be more efficient. So if you're feeling the squeeze between these business demands and what you know that you need to provide to make your customer successful, this is where the DocOps approach of Docs as Code can help you. It can help you by allowing you to move faster, improve and ensure the quality of your documentation, and work in tighter collaboration with your development team. So we're going to start with a quick look at what the five functional areas of DocOps are. It starts with content strategy, editorial style guides, then moves into automated testing, automated deployment, and content analytics. So first, if we think about your content strategy, can your customers understand why they should integrate with your program? Does your site clearly convey key concepts and how to use your service? Having a content strategy that addresses these questions reduces friction, helps make your customers successful faster, and establishes trust with them, and will also result in less reliance on your support team. Secondly, you've got an editorial style guide. This helps you avoid having a site that looks cobbled together and promotes consistency and clarity in your communication. It defines the styles of references, a consistent tone and presentation that reinforces your brand. Note that this isn't really a matter of what's right and wrong. It's a subjective take on what's right for your organization. Applying the Docs as Code method means that you're using the same tooling for writing documentation that you use for working on code, in the same way that you have code editors that have plugins for reporting coding style violations and can run unit tests. You can configure the same code editors with plugins for reporting writing style violations and inconsistencies in your documentation with regard to your company's content strategy and editorial style guides. This also incorporates larger quality assurance tools for documentation that can not only check the consistency of your markup language, but can also incorporate tests to catch annoying functional errors. If you're like me, you'd probably be rich if only you had $1 for every time that you were on a website and you were about to click a link for the one document or guide or diagram that you think is going to make everything clear, and you click the link and get the dreaded 404 page not found error. That's a real trust killer, which can be avoided even in huge documentation stacks with thousands and thousands of pages and cross-references. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about the collaborative gains that DocOps code introduces, and that culminates in automated deployments. It brings your collaboration and testing between your documentation and code changes together so that your documentation doesn't lag the code changes that are happening in your production system, and you're able to avoid the work associated with manual deployments and the errors that can come from that. As I thought about this, I thought about what's fun and different about waiting for the orchestra to tune up, and you hear them randomly practicing little snippets of what they're going to play, but it's very uncoordinated. Whereas in DocOps code, with an automated deployment, it's kind of like when the conductor takes the stage and everything starts running with symphonic coordination and produces something really beautiful. Last but not least, a lot of people forget that they should be doing content analytics. It's really important to use content analytics to learn if you're achieving the goals set out in your content strategy. It also allows you to benchmark where you are in terms of your ability to meet the needs of your users, and gives you a great place to get started to know if the improvements that you're trying to implement are being effective. As the adage goes, that which gets measured gets managed. These metrics can help you by showing you your users' flow through your site. Are they consistently following the flows that you imagine them flowing, or are they just bouncing around from page to page and then landing on your search bar and searching? So, as I said, we're not going to be able to go in depth, and any one of those things that we just covered are a topic unto themselves, or could even have books written about them. But we're really going to focus in on a quick survey of the part of DocOps that forms the core of DocOps code. We'll talk a little bit about editorial style guides because automated testing, where we'll spend most of our time talking, really builds upon that editorial style guide. Your editorial style guide is the embodiment of what you want your documentation to look like and how it should read. And because of that, it becomes the foundation for what quality means in your organization, and becomes a key source for the style checking portion of your documentation. As you'll see, automated deployment is just a natural extension of automated testing. We're not going to go too much into that today, but we will kind of brush up against it. So I told you that DocOps code is really about looking at the development workflows and applying the same methods to your documentation practices. Collaboration is a key part of the process, and here's where you begin to see the start of that. Git and the workflows that came from it allow developers to work in parallel. You've got developers who are operating in iterative ways, writing tests, writing code, testing their code, building the code, testing the build, and deploying without waiting for everyone to be done. Take, for example, here, developer Jane. She's writing code and running unit tests, and when she's happy and thinks that she's done, she commits her code and her tests into a Git repo. So continuous integration starts with the successful merge of her code, which is kind of a test unto itself, because merge conflicts indicate that not everyone's on the same page. So resolving those merge conflicts is the first kind of test that happens. Then you've got CI/CD tools that kick in and conduct automated builds. They run automated tests. If the build results and the test results are good and everyone is happy, then you either have a release candidate, or you might be waiting for some other features or fixes to be built, and they'll come in another build where some other developers' features are or fixes are likewise included. Some additional workflows, often written with the same tooling, then automates the deployment to production, making the latest features and fixes live, which can make customer Frank happy and just, points out that your organization is fast and responsive, and you're delivering value to the customer faster. If this seems daunting to you, depending on your organization, you should know that teams in larger organizations are running hundreds of builds per day against thousands of APIs and deploying fixes and features and new features, multiple times per day. So conceptually, it really is this simple. Docs as code means using the same workflows and same patterns as the code development workflow. In some cases, you're actually using the very same tools, and the only real difference is the content and some of the plugins that those tools are using. So now let's observe tech writer Ádám. He can write Markdown in a code editor with a different set of plugins that serve as his unit test framework. So instead of linting JavaScript, he's linting Markdown. And instead of your build tests running functional tests against code, you can run functional tests against all of your documentation en masse, which will do things like verify that links from one document are correctly cross-linking to other documents, that all of your links are valid, images are present, and as well as many other types of tests, functional and style. So I hope you can see the potential that Docs as code can mean for your business. At Pronovix, we're excited about this because we have seen this successfully implemented with a number of customers, some of which who, as I mentioned, have thousands of docs referencing thousands of APIs, and we've helped them implement these kinds of workflows. And whether or not you do business with us, we hope to help you along the way and hope that you can too. Because Git and the tools around it can be used in multiple ways, the boundaries between what is continuous integration and what is continuous deployment can seem blurry at times. And for people who are really passionate about this area, you may see them arguing about which tool is best and where the line between CI and CD really falls. And this is partly because many of the same tools can be used in different ways within these workflow pipelines. And so that's one reason that you hear CI/CD just said together as a single abbreviation. Another is that continuous deployment is just the logical extension of continuous integration. While we certainly don't have time to talk about all of these tools, I'd be remiss if I didn't call attention to at least some of the major players that are out there. There are lots and lots of great tools, but you're probably likely using some of these tools already in your organization. So I just wanted to point out these. I've got a particular soft spot in my heart for Travis CI and Jenkins, and of course GitHub. Now I'm going to pass the presentation over to Ádám, who's going to zoom in and show you the actual tools and take you in a short round trip that a tech writer can make starting from their desktop environment.
Thank you, Mark. I hope anyone can hear me well. The goal is to achieve quality documentation. And high quality documentation is important for establishing trust with your downstream developers, decision makers. In this regard, I'm defining quality documentation that is free of functional errors like broken links and missing images, is synchronized with the functionality of your product. The content is accurate in that reflects any recent changes, is consistent with your organization style, so that it doesn't read like an afterthought that was thrown together because we had to have docs. Can be found easily by the potential readers or developers, so it's tagged and keyword rich, and useful and easy or even fun to read. So let me show you some kind of things you can test in your documentation. So run automated tests to find spelling errors, unnecessary or missing punctuations, white spaces, syntax errors, broken links, missing or unused images, style guide violations. And if you're using a linter frequently, that makes it possible to detect errors and violations during writing. But let's bring it down to the basics. Here are some tools you can use, and they are free. So we are using Visual Studio Code for writing documentation and collaboration, enhanced with Whale for spell, style guide, markdown, and HTML syntax checker for syntax checks, and of course some Visual Studio Code extensions and some custom scripts for link validation, URL path, and image checks. Visual Studio Code is a lightweight, powerful, and free source code editor, well supported with extensions for collaboration, text code highlights, grammar and syntax checks, dark and light themes for different working conditions or even taste. Customizable, preferences are in YAML format. For example, you can set the frequency of the auto-see feature by changing the value of a parameter. Most of the extensions are customizable, so you can combine their features together. Can be useful for both developers and writers, and Whale is working with Visual Studio Code as an extension, but we are using Whale as a command line tool. And Whale itself is a linter designed to enforce an existing style guide through its YAML-based extension system. And by extension system, I mean is a collection of writing guidelines called styles. And these guidelines are expressed through rules, which are in YAML format. So you don't have to actually code anything. You can list words or regular expressions for more advanced patterns. And checks are rule violations in the text in different aspects. So they are actually can be used to detect these violations. And I listed all the available checks for Whale right now, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper during the demo. Whale is compatible with many text editors as a resident extension working in real time, but can be used, as I mentioned, as a command line tool, and we are committed to this version, and I will tell you now why. In this picture, the content of the text file in Markdown format with an HTML table opened with VS Code. And as a technical writer, you may use more than one tool to check your documentation, like other spell checkers like WriteGood, Linter, Markdown, or code language syntax validators, readability testers, trailing whitespace highlighter, and so on. And so on the right side, now you can see the list of errors found by all installed and active validators. All these results are appearing in the main text as a color-coded zigzag lines and in the problems window. And we find it really overwhelming. And we wanted to reuse the results for further analysis, and we found it easier to export them from the terminal. Command line whale is useful if you want to use whale outside of VS Code. Plus, if you want to use whale together with your own linter solutions like custom URL paths, resource image checkers, you can display all the results in the same window and can run them together at the same time. In our setup, whale runs on every save, make it possible to detect errors and violations during writing. But enough theory, let's put that linter into action. Now let's see what today's demo will cover. We are going to focus mostly on the developer environment. And I'm going to show you the workflow and the basic usage of the aforementioned tools, so you please don't assume it is a step-by-step demo. Let's suppose we have an old documentation on our developer portal for marketing purposes related to one of our API products called Moonrover Photos. The text is in common mark flavored markdown format, and according to recent feedback from a user, it contains a broken link and some other typos. We are going to pull the current state of the documentation. I will skip this part because I did it before the webinar. So, and we are going to open it with VS Code. Let's assume that our company finished working on its style guide after this document is published. We have VS set up on our computer. We can run an automated test to find all errors and style guide violations left in the text. After our corrections, we can commit our changes and publish the text again. So, here you can see the home page of our demo developer portal. And if I scroll down to the featured API section here, I'm landing in the API catalog. Let's select Moonrover Photos. And the text we have to check is this one. You may spot some errors without using any linter tool, like the empty link here, or the missing bracket there, but we shouldn't be content with that. Let's pull the current state of the branch. I hope I did it. So let's see git status. Okay, great. This is the text file from the web page. First, I'm going to save this file to run the linter. As you can see, the terminal window popped up and showing the list of issues we found in the text. I'm going to walk through the YAML files that you can see I already opened for you before I start fixing the flows. Here at the line 3, you can see a spacing error, which that says in the character of 67 between these two characters, there are too much spaces left. As you can see, it's an existence checker, which means it look for an existence that is enlisted here in this file. I used regular expressions, and it checks if these punctuations are followed directly with any of these characters. Then it said it has to be one space separating these characters, or if you use 2 or more white spaces between these characters, it's also mark it with an error flag. Okay. As maybe you already spotted, there is this empty reference here. It's checked this markdown link empty YAML file. It's also in existence, and it's just checks if you left any markdown reference empty. Spelling is based on Hunspell, one of the most popular and free spell checker and morphological analyzer library. We created 2 ignore files with the list of those expressions, like file extensions, HTML tag names, and such we don't want to be found during spell checking. And wording is its long list of key value pairs, as you can see. On the left are words we consider not to use in our documentation. On the right, you can see the suggested substitute values. We use many of well-recognized sources. And I would like to say thanks to the authors of these articles and the composers of these style guides and the whole the docs community, especially to Sven Strack, for their effort to make possible to all of us to achieve more valuable documentation. The flows in the text, like the empty references I mentioned, were easy to spot on the previous page, but its success depends on what Markdown parser do you use. Let's take a look at the built-in preview. I just open it here. As you can see, this part of the text rendered as a normal link that points to nowhere. So let's do the job. I delete the space from here and insert this link here. Let's see. Okay, we correctly filled the empty brackets with a link. It says, okay, it's a well-formatted Markdown URL. We have a typo here, according to our spelling checker. Okay. And we have a duplicated punctuation here. It's another existence checker and a missing bracket here. Let's see. Okay, and according to our currently used style guide, we have to consider using like instead of such as. So let's use like instead of such as. And after our corrections, everything is fine. So we can commit our changes. So let's see. Okay. Again. It's a very brief commit message. Okay. Great, it's successful. And after a review run, let's say our changes are accepted and we merged it to our repo, we can see our correct text inside in the web page. So if you wonder how to start this process, I have some takeaways for you, and Mark will have other tips to learn more. Create a style guide according to your company's standards. Create rules and checks suitable for your workflow. Sometimes there is no right or wrong. Start using automated tests from the very beginning, if you can. Write meaningful error messages to help yourself and your coworkers. Refer to the nature or the exact place of the problem and offer possible solutions. Don't automate everything. If an expression can be used differently according to its usage or surrounding, leave it for the human eyes. Don't be afraid to reformulate or delete your rules if they are giving you plus work. They have to make your life easier. Never stop testing. Look for false alarms and edge cases, and keep your style safe in a repository. Thank you very much. Mark?
Okay, if you go to the next slide for me, Adam. Other way. Okay, so thank you. So if you are working on implementing Docs code as part of your DocOps program or trying to start your technical writing team down the DocOps path, these are things that I was thinking about that you need to take into account. Develop those foundations that we talked about, your content strategy, developing an editorial style guideline, and doing content analytics. Content analytics can be very important for you to establish that baseline for where you are, as well as helping justify what you're doing to other members of your organization, your stakeholders. Evaluate your current DevPortal. Look at, what's there now. Is it meeting the needs of your less technical contributors, your business contributors? Is it meeting the needs of your technical writers? Are your developers participating in such a way that the changes that they're making easily land on your developer portal? Also, just don't forget that every organization is different in the way that changes have to be introduced, and some people run into problems because they just forget about how different, how their organization handles change. And you can, at least in one occasion, maybe more than one, I was labeled as kind of going rogue because I wasn't following our company's change management process. So think about that and how to manage it. If you're not currently partnering with and collaborating tightly with your developer team, that one change is going to be critical to you, no matter what kind of tools you use. I think you're going to see gains from that. So investigate the tools that they're using, see where you may be able to leverage things that they've already spent time developing, gain their trust by using a sandbox if they've got it. And even if you don't start with any of their tooling, a great thing that seems obvious to me, but I've seen many organizations where it didn't happen, but have your tech writers participate in their stand-ups, have them in the same Slack channels so that the tech writer gets a preview of what's happening in the developer team, and you're not surprised with a batch of work or changes that have to be made last minute because you're already working in sync with them. Again, as Adam said, start small and grow from success. So look for a pain point that you have in your system, put some automation around that, and then grow from there. Last but not least, we've learned so much from our communities, and we try to be a very active community participant. There are so many people out there who are passionate about these topics, and they're going to help you along the way. I'm glad that Sven was mentioned. Sven Strack was the guy who took this from a conceptual level for me. I was a development manager, so I understood these workflows, but he started showing me some of the tools and techniques for Docs as code. So I'm thankful to him, and I'm trying to help pay it forward by this talk and presenting in community talks. Okay. Here's some helpful resources. At Pronovix, we have a lot of non-marketing based content where we really try to focus on making a lot of very useful resources consumable by a large audience. So don't think I'm trying to send you to pronovix.com to try to sell you. We publish a newsletter, and we really try to make sure that there's a lot of great content there to help improve you, no matter who you're doing business with. Here's a couple of communities. The Test the Docs community is pretty small, but Write the Docs community is huge, and they're they've got great resources around testing on their site as well. I already mentioned API of the Docs, but API days, we go to those conferences, and DevPortal is great. So check these out. Specifically from DevPortal, I talked with Ádám Butler, and he gave me permission to quote him here. He said, focus on things that actually add some value, like docs like code. Take engineering practices because that works really well for written content as well. And so I hope we've been able to demonstrate that at least in a small fashion today. Thank you very much for coming today. Your time is valuable, and we did not want to waste it. At this point, we're ready to take questions if you have some. And if you want to put questions in the chat window or you want to speak up, I'll unmute you if I can. GoToMeeting is a little flaky for me, but we're happy to take comments, feedback. One question we got asked yesterday is, what do you guys use at Pronovix for your automation, and what kinds of tools do you use? And we use Garrett and Jenkins. We've got quite a bit built around those. For our DevPortal, we have tools that import OAS, Swagger, Markdown files and publish your API docs. And I just had a lot of fun working on a very complex documentation project where we worked with a massive code base. It required us to build a custom importer that isn't part of our product. But we ended up generating thousands of reference docs for various versions of the platform. So there's a lot you can do, and we hope that you'll try some of these things out. Okay, here's another question. Is it possible for Veil to automatically make some of the corrections?
Well,
Adam?
Will can't actually corrections by itself, so it just detects the error and shows you where and how can you correct them, but you can enhance it with other tools or scripts that are not just detecting errors, but uses the results to find the places where it needs to be fixed, and it's corrected automatically. Okay. I hope it answered your question.
Kate asks the question, what tools or techniques do you use to estimate your work on docs, new ones and updates? For that question, I'm not sure that I understand the full context of it. I know that we have tools where we keep track of work that we need to do on docs, and we kind of have a what I would call a Kanban approach to working on our docs. So we're constantly correcting the existing docs and working new docs into that workflow. Adam, you've got more experience with how that work might get estimated.
We actually try to estimate considering our experiments, and we are working try to use a really granular method to keep our documentation up to date. That means we created, we can say, an MVP part, an MVP documentation, which we try to always fixing and make it as up to date as possible. And if we have to alter that, we cannot. We shouldn't need to check the whole documentation again and again, just the parts we need. So. And if we have to use have to use documentation for different projects, we can use our parts that we have. So actually, this is how we estimate our work.
Okay,
Hello.
thanks. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Kate here. So I have unmuted just to give you some more context and what I was trying to ask in chat. So yeah, first of all, thanks for your presentation and sharing some of your insights. I also work with development team and in sprints. And I visit daily stand-up meetings, and usually why I asked about estimations, usually, for instance, developers would estimate their work in story points. And I, as a technical writer, also want to be able to give some estimations or maybe some metrics on how to measure the scope of work for creation new part of user guide or for updating API references. So yeah, my question was more about how do you give those estimations in time, considering your research, your historical data or experience working on a similar document, and so on and so forth. Thanks.
Thank you. And I can say both. We're using Redmine to monitor our work and Toggle, and it is connected together. And if we are working on a task, it's logged every time we spend with a specific task or a chapter. Actually, if we are speaking about a user guide, and we can use that as an estimation, start to estimate a different kind of work we have to do. So actually, we have those metrics, plus we can estimate based on our experiments, our experience.
So I would just throw in there that two other things that I've seen done on both code and documentation teams is some people have really tried to stick with story points, but they get hung up on how granular they are, so they switch to the same concept but do t-shirt sizing and try to say things that are extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large, and that kind of helps people get a feel for it. And then the work between teams, like your documentation team, you can just kind of establish with your development team that if you're doing this kind of thing, this is the amount of lead time we need, because that might not be very large for you, is kind of an Excel for us. And then some people skip it all together and do their estimations in hours. And again, so the comment that Adam made based on just looking at what similar tasks took, because we log our time, become a good basis for that. So hopefully that helps answer a little better. Kate, you asked about content analytics. Google Analytics is surprisingly good as a place to start, and it's something that most people have implemented. I've also used Amplitude. Amplitude requires more configuration on the front end, and it's a service that you have to pay for it at a certain point, but they're quite good in terms of actually following specific user flows through your site. And so those are the two that I'm most familiar with.
Great, thanks so much for sharing. And yes, thanks for mentioning t-shirt sizing. I've also been practicing this as an estimation against of story points with my documentation team, and it really helps when you communicate with developers who work with story points in Sprint. So thanks.
With all of those types of estimates, that's one reason people sometimes fall back to hours, because hours are something that are not subjective, whereas these other things are subjective. And I would say that these subjective measures work best whenever you're working with the same group of people. So if you have people who are constantly working on new teams, what one team calls a story point of 5 or a t-shirt size of large is going to mean something different on a different team. So it's really helpful if you have people working together who have some experience, and if not, then they try to put more definition around what these things mean. Sometimes it's pointing to pieces of a project that even if you didn't work on the project, you have some sense of the size and scope it was, and going from there. Anything else from anyone? Okay, well, we're at an hour, and I really, really appreciate the time that you spent with us today. I hope it was useful. And again, I hope to meet some of you in person at some of these community events. Take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Bye.